So let me turn to Jeff Dean and Richard Hornsby. A lot of my Twitter followers are actually asking, what's the deal with the paternity test? Why did that come up?
Well, it came up originally because Jose Baez absolutely inferred that his client's been molested. He said by her father in the opening statement, but now it's kind of evolved into this thing where it could be her brother, it could be her father, and that's the reason for all of her odd behavior. So that's why it's originally come up.
Okay, because we know the paternity test was negative for both Lee and George, but what Baez is trying to do is just get that possibility out there.
Well, what he asked about in the way he asked his question, and what the prosecutor objected to, was the inference that the police didn't know, and that they were trying to do some investigation to make sure that there were no inferences of Casey Anthony being molested. So the way Jose Baez asked the question was, it inferred that they were trying to get to the bottom of something that really was never there in the beginning.
I got you. Now, Richard, the judge said he was going to consider this question over lunch. What do you think is going to happen when we come back from the lunch break?
Well, I think the issue itself is relevant, whether or not law enforcement tested for paternity to compare it to Lee Anthony, to see if Lee Anthony was the father of Kaylee. And here's why. The state has given a very sterile version of the Anthony family in their case in chief. If you were to look at them from the outside, and presumably the jury has no advanced knowledge of them, they'd think they're a fairly normal family with a crazy daughter. What Jose Baez is trying to say is, no, every single one of them was crazy, and they were so crazy that law enforcement didn't know who was the father and wanted to test everybody, because there was a lot of accusations beforehand. And obviously that evidence is not going to be brought in, but if you can leave the insinuation out there that the state is holding something back or didn't give you the full picture, the jury is going to be very questionable of the way they portray themselves in closing statements.
All right, well, we're going to go to a commercial break, but when we come back, we're going to hear more from our analysts about some of the testimony we heard this morning as the defense started presenting evidence in its case. We'll be back.
Thank you, Amanda. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. Choose Amanda Ober. And Amanda, the defense brought up so many different points during the opening statements: the drowning, the molestation, Roy Kronk. So they have to now cover all of those bases.
They do, and that's what we'll be looking for in the coming days as the defense presents its evidence. But Aixa, one of the most interesting occurrences in the courtroom this morning was this battle between Jeff Ashton and Jose Baez, and Judge Perry playing referee. And we want to talk about that a little bit with our analysts, Jeff Dean and Richard Hornsby. When the state was presenting its case, Jose Baez was the one who kept objecting, and now we're seeing that role reversal. What could that potentially mean for the case?
Well, the process is supposed to work like that. It's an adversarial process. The side that's putting on evidence expects that there are going to be objections and attacks to the evidence they're putting in. But what's different about this is that these objections, especially by the state attorney so far, they're always so personal. Like, he insinuates that this isn't in good faith, that he knows better. Those kinds of objections, this volatile attitude, that makes a particular impression on juries. And every trial lawyer knows that when you're the defense attorney, the jury expects you to put on your case and to defend your client, and there's a certain expectation that defense attorneys will do that. That's not the case for prosecutors. Prosecutors are supposed to seek justice. They're not supposed to go to win. They're supposed to find out the truth and seek justice. And when these objections are so loud and so vociferous and so emotional and so personal, that's the wrong impression for the prosecutor to give sometimes.
Let's face facts here. Up until this point, I think the general consensus is that people feel that Jose Baez had kind of agitated the jury or rubbed them the wrong way in the way he objected and the way he handled his representation of Casey Anthony to this point. However, we're going to completely see a role reversal. Anybody that's ever tried a case with Jeff Ashton knows he's like a bear. If you just poke him and do the slightest thing, he's going to blow up into a rage. And the jury will get frustrated by that if they see it time and time again, if they see it's over very little and minute things and not something that's really important in the case. And I have noticed, other than Jose Baez not having the pocket square today, he is keeping his emotions down. He's been a lot more professional he has been in the past about the way he's just handling people's really calm demeanor. And you contrast that to Jeff Ashton, suddenly the state is going to become the bad guys. They build up a lot of goodwill, and at this point, if Jeff Ashton is always in the attack, I think that Linda Jane Burdick is going to have to pull the leash on him, or they risk losing the trust of the jury.
Okay, real quick, you brought up the pocket square, so we have to go there. What was your point about the pocket square?
Well, let's face it. Anybody that's seen Jose Baez in court has known he has a pocket square, and it's, you know, maybe it was for flash or not, and today he doesn't. That, I think it means he's throwing down the gauntlet. He's ready for the state.
I don't think it means that. I think he's just trying to throw us off.
Okay.
And I think it has something to do. Never mind.
Okay. But Jeff, you were going to say something about this potential loss of goodwill with being so combative.
Well, what happens is that the jury expects that the state wants everything out there.
Yeah.
When he objects like that, the natural question for juries, and they do this, is to say, what is it they don't want us to know? Why is he not letting us find this out? They expect that from a defense attorney. That's not the same question that they'll ask about what Jose Baez does. But when you object this way, and it's up there and it's so loud and it's so so personal, juries ask questions about the state attorney. Why didn't he want us to know that? They're hiding something. That's a weakness in the case, and he's got to watch that.
Richard, in terms of what we saw this morning, is really the upshot of Jose Baez's questioning of these witnesses to try to say to the jury, this is not what was found in Casey's trunk, this is not what was found on her clothing, and is it that important?
Well, I think the upshot is to show how little actual forensic evidence they found tying Casey and Kayla together, considering how much forensic evidence there should be. I mean, they brought in the FBI for this case. That's not a common occurrence. And you have the top people testing this stuff, and they found very little DNA to connect Casey to Kaylee to what they say is a murder weapon. That's pretty huge deals. And the fact that even the FBI had contamination, because remember, Orange County law enforcement was handling the evidence before they got it. I think that's going to allow Jose Baez to suggest, just like in the O.J. Simpson case, you can't trust the forensics in this case. It was purposely made to convict my client. And while I don't think they got a O.J. Simpson jury, they do have smart people that will recognize maybe the state has gone overboard.
But can't the state, Jeff, just come back with, okay, there were coffin flies in the trunk. We've heard so many people talk about the odor of death in the trunk. I mean, can't they, and the fatty acids on the paper towels.
What happens is, as I've said over and over to you, Amanda, the closer you get to pinning the state down on cause of death, time of death, and who killed this baby, the bigger leaps the jury has to make. And they know that, and they get very defensive about attacks that way. It was in their legal argument yesterday. It's in their case today. He's showing all the things that weren't found because you can find a reasonable doubt in the lack of evidence. And every time you attack one of those things that has to do with the death, not how she acts, not if she's a liar, not if her family's nuts, none of that. When you start talking about that child and that death, the bigger leap the jury has to make, and they're very aware of it, and they're very defensive about it.
All right, Jeff Dean and Richard Hornsby, thank you as always for being with us. And that's it from our courthouse studio. Let's go back to our news studio.
Thanks, Amanda.